Warmonger Blair urges Syria intervention. Former British Prime Minister Tony Blair has called for intervention in the Syrian conflict, saying that the cost paid by the West for not getting involved could be higher than that of intervening in the conflict. So that's, it's like I always said, we're doing all the bidding, all of the hard work for Israel and for Zionists, and that's exactly what a good loyal little Zionist like Mr. Tony Blair would say. Blair was accused of war crimes for joining the illegal U.S.-led invasion of Iraq in March 2003. Next up, report says U.S. military rejected John Kerry's plan to attack in Syria. At the White House meeting, U.S. Secretary of State called for airstrikes on fields of Assad's army used to launch chemical weapons against the rebels. General Dempsey said Air Force could not simply drop a few bombs. It says here they threw a series of brushback pitches at Kerry, demanding to know just exactly what the post-strike plan would be, and pointing out that the State Department didn't fully grasp the complexity of such an operation. And that's why Blair, of course, says that we should at least, we don't have to start sending troops, dropping bombs, but it says here the international community, which is international jewelry, should think about installing no-fly zones. Syria's Islamists seize control as moderates dither. This is from Reuters. As the Syrian invasion by these Islamists got underway, a former electrician who calls himself Sheikh Omar built up a brigade of rebel fighters. And I'm sorry I call them Islamists. They're not really even Islamists, I guess. I guess you can call them mercenaries. They refer to themselves as jihadists. They basically want to set up like a Sunni Salafate or something. But in the end, they'll be used by Israel to basically clear Syria and any anti-Israeli resistance out of the way, so they can put in their gas lines and that. And of course, they'll get a new puppet, kind of like Morsi in Egypt and that, installed. So, I mean, they're not going to get the Islamic State. They're going to get something like what they have in Egypt, and that's why Egypt and Morsi just basically cut ties with Syria officially, publicly. And why did he do that? Well, because that's like that's a script being played out, right? That's what he has to do. That's his marching orders for being able to get into office. So it goes on here and it says that this group wasn't defeated by the government. It was dismantled by a rival band of revolutionaries, hardline Islamists. Al-Nusra, or Al-Qaeda, assassinates Free Syrian Army officers. So you can see a lot of stuff, dicey stuff going on behind the scenes. John Kerry saying we need to attack. Then you have this, the military net saying no, we don't. We're going to arm the rebels. No, we're going to, now the rebels aren't really getting their arms as fast because you got these moderates being overtaken by hardline Islamists. Then you have Al-Qaeda, Al-Nusra taking out the Free Syrian Army officers. They can't get together and form some kind of coalition. So the U.S. withholds its aid. Then after the, quote, chemical attack evidence that the UN is certain of, now they're going to arm the rebels. So I do feel like how I said before, I think Obama, for whatever it's worth, if he's a puppet or not, I think he's being pulled and twisted a million different ways right now. Says here that the Arabia Press reports also said that the Al-Nusra Front systematically threatens families of FSA officers. During the influence of Al-Nusra Front, most Free Syrian Army officers do not have the courage to speak out about numerous treasons committed by the Al-Qaeda offshoot against the ongoing revolt in Syria. Then we have hundreds of Western fighters captured by pro-Assad forces. It says here that we are holding 300 Westerners, of whom 6 or 7 are Italian, according to the information I have. They're all converts to Islam. So these are hundreds of Westerners, including Italians, have been captured fighting alongside the rebels seeking to overthrow President Assad's government. The report says French military are training the Syrian rebels, French intelligence officers working in tandem with Saudi officials who are funding the rebels, according to Army Radio. So they're training the rebels to bring down the Assad regime in the current Syrian conflict. They're training the rebels in warfare tactics and weapons usage. They're doing this in Jordan and in Turkey. People around the world oppose arming Syrian rebels. A new poll shows 70% of Americans oppose arming the Syrian rebels. Only 17% in Britain are for arming the rebels. Also in France, the French are opposing arming the rebels, as do the Turks. And it's kind of another reason why what's going on in Turkey, what's happening with those protests. Again, I think that they're completely engineered. Not saying that there's not real reasons to be protesting the Erdogan government. They have every right to be. And most governments, they have puppet regimes. But the Zionists use these protest uprisings for whatever the reasons to create instability and basically put pressure on their puppet to basically kowtow to what they want them to do, which is to continue operations inside and against Syria, which would be, for example, creating a no-fly zone, providing troops, whatever. But if I remember correctly, all of these protests in Turkey started from a tree, cutting down a tree, so at least that's what they say. But it's like I said, like I mentioned before in these recent reports, is that this plays in to Israel and the Western powers' strategy, which is to create, now that they're losing, it's very clear that they were losing the war in Syria, that all of a sudden these protests break out in Turkey. So it creates destabilization, and of course you have the Hezbollah element in Lebanon and trying to drag Lebanon into this. All the meanwhile, you have in Jordan the United States carrying out exercises, coalition joint exercises, and it's aimed at sending Assad a message. This is my website, ggnonline.com, global government news. There's a poll up here. What is your take on the recent NSA scandal? Not much. Another control leak to engineer consent. So far, 84% say that, followed by 15% saying that this is progress, a grassroots campaign against a surveillance state. If you would like to help, it would be much appreciated. I do accept PayPal donations, so every once in a while I'll have to give that spiel, but I appreciate those that have helped. It definitely does help. U.S. certain about Syria use of chemical weapons, says Barack Obama. Says, unlike the Russian government, Washington is certain that the Syrian troops have used chemical weapons in their fight against the foreign-backed militants. Russia basically said that these claims of these chemical weapons being used by the Syrian government would not meet the requirements of the Hague-based Organization for Prohibition of Chemical Weapons. Well, it doesn't really matter, right? Just like Iraq. I mean, they just have to say it, and there doesn't have to be any proof to take action. They have to engineer consent. Flashback, Yahoo, U.S.-backed plan to launch chemical weapon attack on Syria and blame it on the Assad government. This was in Yahoo News back in January. Go check that out. Awkward, Putin and Obama disagree over Syria. Both leaders look tense and uncomfortable as they address reporters. I haven't watched the video, but that one clip, man, yeah, I mean, I've seen it before where they look kind of icy. I'm not saying that that both countries are occupied by Zionists. They are, and I think Russia and the U.S. are part of this kind of hybrid East-West bloc that are controlled by the same group. So I don't want to dissuade you or whatever, make you think that this is, big old school World War II stuff here. I mean, you had the United States back in World War II funneling money and aiding and propping up the Soviet Union and Stalin. So it just goes to show you what kind of elements were within the United States government back in World War II. But it says here, both leaders look tense and uncomfortable as they address reporters after about 2 hours of talk with Putin, staring mostly at the floor as he spoke about Syria, and Obama only glancing occasionally at the Russian leader. Says just started watching. Body language says a lot. Look at Obama's legs compared to Putin's. So, Israeli army violates border fence with Lebanon. The Zionist unit of 10 soldiers and 4 Hummer vehicles crossed on Wednesday the border fence in southern Lebanon, moved forward. It says here, near this fort, Al-Wazani Fort project across a newly paved road. The enemy force was guarded by 2 tanks. Now this is the second or third time I've heard this in news reports coming out in Lebanon or Syria involving Israel, adding that the soldiers try to provoke the Lebanese citizens by shooting them with their advanced cameras. They do it to the soldiers and to the citizens as well. Lebanese minister accuses Syria of ethnic cleansing of Sunnis. So there you go, right? Dragging Lebanon in there. So, and they have to make it about sectarianism, right? Assad is battling a Sunni-led revolt in Syria, which he and his father before him have ruled for decades, right? 4 decades. He belongs to the minority Alawite sect, an offshoot of Shiite Islam. So they played the same card with Saddam Hussein, right? Both countries, for the most part, were pretty, secular. They had different groups and sects, including Christians and Jews living in that country, and for the most part, pretty peaceful and stable. Syrian armed group claims responsibility for this Becca attack, killing 4 Lebanese. A group of militants, Syrians, claimed on Wednesday that they are responsible for killing 4 Lebanese citizens. They called it the Mujahideen Company. Of course, that's what associated with kind of the anti-Islamic Republic of Iran group. Israel wants U.S. to front them future military aid for more weapons. United States just amended the National Defense Authorization Act for drones and spying in America? No. For torturing? No. Actually, it was unquestionable commitment to Israel to protect them and be on their side. So they say they're calling it a bridge loan, but in reality it's tantamount to when a child wants a couple of weeks advance in their allowance to buy something, seeking $5 billion worth of weapons, and wants the government to guarantee the amount so that the U.S. commercial banks will front them the additional cash on the assumption it will eventually be covered by future U.S. aid, i.e. Hardworking taxpayers, who are basically through media, through news, bombarded with the propaganda that it's Israel first, right? Polls shows Erdogan's popularity has taken a hit. Could he lose his mandate? So his approval rating has dropped almost 10 points. So will he go? I don't know. Maybe they'll replace him with someone that will do what they want him to do. Turkey may deploy army to quell anti-government protests. You can go and watch some of the videos by 108 Morris with Sheikh Hossein, and he lays it out. He goes into pretty good depth about Turkey, and he talks about basically Constantinople, or Istanbul, and he goes into all kinds of history, saying how they're trying to create this whole sectarian divide, and there's a bigger thing on the agenda, a bigger plan, which some people refer to as World War III or something. But Erdogan and Turkey, they've been trying to get into the EU, part of NATO. Hossein says that it's not going to happen, which is funny because I saw this article today. Merkel's conservatives say Turkey would overburden the EU, so they're providing opposition against the accession of Turkey to the bloc. That's why you can't trust this group of people, man. They tell you you're going to do something, and then they just stab you in the back, leave you hanging. Islam at war with itself, so this is part of the plan, right? Islam at war with itself, and that's what Sheikh Hussein kept saying. I don't agree with everything that he says, because he's very supportive of Russia and stuff like that, and I'm surprised he doesn't see the difference, or that basically the similarities, like I was talking about, between the Zionist-occupied governments in Russia and the United States. Then, second man arrested over mosque fire in Gloucester. So I know I probably messed up that word, but that's not the point. The point is that with the whole Woolwich murder, instead of people that were kind of like anti-immigration, that was a big thing. They were anti-multiculturalism. Now they've been used by Zionists to take out the Zionist number one enemy. Besides Whitey is what? Muslims. But they have to use Whitey and Christians to do that. Funny too, because one of the people actually was rolling around in a BMW or Mercedes. So Russia says Iran prepares to stop 20% uranium enrichment. Israel says move unacceptable. In fact, they said they won't accept less than total halt of Iran's nuclear enrichment, which is, according to them, used for electricity. But it doesn't really matter, because like I said, they still have the right to defend themselves. If they are a sovereign nation, who knows? Israel clarifies gas export policy. We're keeping 60%. So again, another thing that Hussein says was that when Turkey may go down, they have a regime change, Syria goes down, that's when you'll see Israel all of a sudden rise really fast. Israeli expansion. And now they got their nice little export. U.S. Afghan, and of course they got the lapdog U.S. government to do all their hard work, right? Heavy lifting. U.S. Afghans, Taliban to begin peace talks in Qatar, one of the biggest funders of this crisis in Syria. Pakistan welcomes opening of Taliban office, so Pakistan wants the Taliban. Karzai of Afghanistan pulls out of Afghan peace talks. He insists U.S. Taliban talks are only benefiting foreigners. So he's been a bad puppet lately with things he's been saying. Afghan MPs oppose Taliban office in Qatar. It's about managing the poppy, the heroin trade, right? U.S. terror drone strike kills 5 in western Afghanistan. Locals say it was a Taliban commander that was killed by the U.S. So U.S. says it will buy Russian helicopters for Afghan military. So how you like me now? Yemen says U.S. is trying to disintegrate Yemen. It says here that the U.S. Ambassador Michael Firestein, Zionist, is commanding the operations room, advising Yemen's intelligence and security services. Another Zionist, ex-Senator Feingold, chosen as special envoy to African region. So Zionists and, like, what was Obama appointing? Homosexuals, right, as ambassadors. Mali and Tuareg rebels to sign accord. UN prepares to go to war for the first time in the Congo with 3,000 forces. Attack on UN compound in Somalia called barbaric. Thank you.